And one. Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Global Citizens. My name is Calvin. I am the show's host and I'm also its creator. So, my guest for today is Ms Cathy Johnson. Cathy is the president of Asian Professional Speakers of Singapore. She is also an international keynote speaker, and along with that, she is also a coach for C-suite and a facilitator. She has been in the corporate sectors for over 20 years of her life, and she is one, if not the most amazing speaker you will ever meet. I've actually seen some of her works, even though I've only seen her in person by today. So, Cathy, how are you? Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm great. How about you?
Well, been cooped up in my house for right now around 3 weeks, give or take, maybe. Because in the earliest part of the day, my dad still insists on going out, but he insists that we go out by as long as we're inside the car. So there was one funny incident whereby we actually need to deliver something, and we need to do it a la mafia style, whereby we park the car beside each other and then we just pass the package.
Oh, that's funny. Oh,
Yeah.
that makes it fun.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, like, like when you are watching a mafia movie and you're like, oh, I've done that. So as long as it's not a live body, so it's
Exactly.
fine.
You're okay.
All right. So we will actually begin with the first question. All right, Kathy. So your hometown is actually in Chicago, Illinois. You actually studied in North Carolina in University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, right? So just a little fun fact. These are two unique locations that is synonymous with Michael Jordan himself, since he's from North
That's right.
Carolina and
That's right.
he made a legend out of himself in Chicago. So for yourself, right, what spurs you on to stay in Singapore? You have actually stayed in. You are actually one of the three people that I know that have stayed in Singapore longer than me. And what aspect to it makes it easier for you to settle in, like in North Carolina or in Chicago?
So, first of all, I've lived in more places than that: Georgia, Florida, North Carolina, New York City, and then
Yep.
Chicago, and then to
Yep.
Singapore. Um, what makes me stay in Singapore? I really love living here. My number one and number two reasons why I love living. I really love the mix of people here. I,
Yep.
even though I live in New York City and in Chicago, where there's a fair mix of people from different parts of the world, they don't mix so well. They don't mix so
Yep.
much on a personal basis. But here, like when we have a party here, it's like the United Nations. It's people from all over, and I never knew that until I lived here. It's life giving to me, so I really love that. The number two reason why I love living in Singapore is I love plants, trees, and flowers. And it is like living in a garden here. I really, everywhere I go, I'm always looking at the trees and plants and flowers. There's some unusual trees, especially that I find very often Singaporeans don't even know about. I tell them about a tree that I love, and they're like, "Really? Is that here?" Yeah. So that's the key reasons why I love living here.
All right. Okay. Huh. Okay. I've actually only known, aside from like those typical tourist attraction, maybe like the Botanic Garden or Gardens by the Bay. The only known plant related that I know in Singapore that is iconic is the Rafflesia arnoldi that is located inside the Istana. And I think it's a tradition for like when the British royalty visited Singapore, there'll be a flower that's named after them.
Yeah.
That's one that is actually named after the late Princess Diana. That she was actually supposed to visit Singapore at that time, but she doesn't she it was well, we know what happened, and
Yeah.
her son actually visited that place and actually saw the flower that's named after his mom.
Mhm.
So
Very
that's
nice.
maybe you can tell me a little bit more of that.
I don't know about that flower. I do know they do name flowers after visiting dignitaries.
Yeah,
I find your fun facts very interesting. By the way, I've seen them on your
yeah,
page as well. No, I'll tell you one of my favorite trees is one that's the colloquial name is the Cannonball Tree. It's a tree that
okay,
is very tall, and from about one third the way up to the top of the tree, it looks like most any other tree, branches and leaves. But the first third of that tree has very craggly branches coming out, and it has a lot of flowers on these branches. They're peach colored and white, cream colored, and they have a scent to them as well. But when they finish flowering, they become these big, what looks like cannonballs. So there are huge cannonballs hanging all over the bottom of this tree after it's flowered. I just find it fascinating. I've never known a tree to be like that. It's just a very unusual one. And again, I can spot them anywhere, but if you I think a lot of trees and plants and flowers, because there's so many in Singapore, I think they become sort of background noise if you've been here all your life, for example. So anyway, I like introducing Singapore plants, trees, and flowers to Singaporeans here as well.
You'll be. I think it's just the wonder of when you visited a new country. I think it's like there are certain things that may seem greener on the other side, and the reason why is like what you said. For yours is your love of nature. Okay, so earlier you mentioned like when let's say you're having parties in Singapore, it's being a melting pot of diversity. Yeah. So in the last 5 years, though, what new belief, behavior, or habit has improved your life with spending time in Singapore? Because I've lived in Singapore for 15 years. So to me, is that one of the things that's interesting is that there are, with all of the different ethnicities in Singapore, I actually draw a certain characteristics of each of them. Do you share the same sentiments on that?
What do you mean by draw the characteristics of each of them?
Okay, so each, like, let's say when we describe maybe a Malay, yeah, Malays tend to really enjoy life, and one thing is that they really value work-life balance, and well, life, the life being leaning towards more, and along with that, they tend to be in a really close community, so there is no secret, and sometimes there is no personal boundaries to what they can be. But the thing is that if you do not interpret it correctly, you may misunderstood it as well as being too personal or being rude, I guess. But the thing is, I think this is also the positive part about it is because it allows you to be more open-minded in accepting other kinds of personality and those from outside of your surroundings.
Yeah. I would say that I look at things slightly differently, and that
Okay.
probably comes from my work as a coach. So, about 12 years ago, I left the company I was working for. I was head of marketing of a NASDAQ listed company headquartered in Hong Kong, but I was in the Singapore office. And I realized at some point that what I loved about my job was anything to do with coaching or developing people. And at some point, I decided I just want to do that part I love and not this other stuff. So I made a major career move about 12 years ago. And so ever since then, I have been coaching and facilitating. And in the last 5 years, I added in speaking. But I took a year-long professional coach certification course to help me to really get something solid in terms of methodology and approach and way of being with coaching clients. And one of the things that I've learned from coaching hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people and tens of thousands of sessions is that each person is different. Each person really, really is unique. And whatever kind of idea we have about what this person may be like because of their background or their ethnicity or anything tells just part of the story and may absolutely not be true at all for that person. So I'm really careful, and I approach people very differently now, just because the more I work with individuals, the more I'm clear. Whatever I think I know about someone, I have no idea. It really is. Everyone is so different. And I have many, many friends who are Malays, many friends who are from many different countries, and I've coached people from all different ethnicities and backgrounds and countries. Um, the more I coach different people, the more I'm clear about that. We have absolutely no idea what really matters to people, what really drives them. So, anyway, that's my view. That's the one thing that's happened to me in the last, well, 10, 11, 12 years.
All right. Okay. You actually jump ahead of the next question I'm going to ask
Sorry,
you. So,
Greg.
but no worries. No worries. No worries.
Oh, oh
I mean,
no.
naturally, it will come to that
Yeah.
anyway. So, not to worry about that. I actually appreciate that because it really does shows your insight. Okay. So, first off, I actually want to tackle on what is the current epidemic that is actually happening in our world today, the COVID-19. And well, as we mentioned before beginning the interview, one of the main setbacks is that we are stuck at home, and yet there are those people who would still insist on, well, still wanting to go outside. Maybe it's, well, they do have, or some of them do have valid reasons, but there are those who, and in fact, I'm sad to say it's a majority who do it is because they just feel too cooped up. And well, in order to release it, they need to do it, something that they are denied of doing. Yeah. So, aside from that, what do you feel are the issues that's going to be moving forward? It's because I recently have a millennial expert on my show, and one of the two issues that we are discussing is on recession and rise in entrepreneurship. Do you agree with this? And what's your intake on that?
Um, I look at it a little differently. I think we're definitely going to have a global recession.
Yep.
Um, I look at it, all of this is opportunities. When people are cooped up at home,
Yep.
a couple of things are happening. First of all, they're not getting up at 5:30 or 6 in the morning to get ready to go into work, and then they're not
Yep.
taking another 30 minutes to an hour and a half or 2 hours to get home from work. So they are able to have a little bit more relaxed lifestyle than what is normal.
Yep.
They also are spending more time with their family. So some of the opportunities
Indeed.
I see are, I think people will start to reevaluate what they want to do in terms of work. What I've been seeing for several years is that people are given more and more and more and more work to do every year. Um, Maybe 20 years ago or so, when I first moved to Singapore, when people would leave work, you left work and you went home and you spent time with your family and you didn't think about work so much until the next morning. But
Yep.
with laptops and phones, that's changed. It's like you're on 24/7. So what I've seen in the last few years is that people I've coached are pushing themselves more and more and more to do more and more. It doesn't matter how great a job you do. No one's going to say to you, you did such a great job last year. We're going to cut your workload by 10%. That is never, ever going to happen. It's going to be, you're going to get more.
Yep.
And I think that will continue until people start to say, this doesn't work for me. And I'm thinking that one of the positive things that could come out of this whole experience is people deciding, I don't want to go back to that kind of life. I'd like to have a life for a change. So I see some of this as very positive. People losing their jobs or having their pay cut, which is also something that's happening now.
Yep.
And I think it's going to happen more before this is over, is that it will make people create their own change. So it's an opportunity. It means they could, for example, do something they always wanted to do. I find a lot of people, in particular in Asia, but not just Asia, family, sometimes parents have an idea about what they think the child should be doing for a living, and it may or may not be attuned to what the child wants. And I think this could be an opportunity for people to reassess and say, you know what, I always wanted to do this, and I don't have a job now anyway. I'm going to pursue what I wanted to do. Things will always be online, and that will be more so. I think. I think a lot of infrastructure will rise so that, for example, there's no lag. Even I can see my movements are a little lagged right here,
Yeah.
but all of infrastructure will be improved. So I think a lot of things will go online, but it's not where we will live. It's not like um, life is how we experience it in our bodies right here. Like this is who we are, not let's say our avatar. Although those are fun, but it's not our real life.
Yeah.
So another thing that I think is going to be an opportunity is people are going to be are spending right now a lot of time with their family, with parents or with a spouse, with kids if they have them. And I'm pretty clear that some families have gotten along because we're all together, and I spend most of my time at work anyway, and I come home and I work, so I don't need to deal with the fact that we're not actually so connected so well, or we don't get along so well. But I think some things that don't work so well will be exposed in this period because so you're in your third week, right? We're in our
Yeah.
second week. We have at least 2 more weeks to go. It's I wouldn't be surprised if it's our circuit breaker is extended, and
Yeah.
that means people could be cooped up alone with their family for like 6 weeks, or maybe even 8 weeks, or 12 weeks. And at some point, I think people will start to ask themselves, is this how I want to live my life? Is this working for me? Is this the way I want to live my private life? Is this how I want to live my work life? So I think it's actually a real opportunity, although there is pain as well. But that's
Yeah.
how we grow.
Indeed. Okay. Earlier, with regards to what you mentioned on opportunity, yeah, from your insights, and I believe this is also some industries that you have spearheaded in the past. What do you think are the opportunity for e-commerce and also a digital nomadic lifestyle, whereby now individuals can start working from laptops from their home, or maybe they'll be on vacation, but during their downtime they still can work. What are your thoughts on that, Katie?
Um, that's been the case for a long time.
Yep.
I'm not sure it's changing much, except that I think the infrastructure will change. I think there will be more apps and software that's online that will be, part for entertainment, part, even different entertainment and connection online. So a lot of things that are happening now that weren't big before, like games that you can play with groups. Um, excuse me. Zoom has been around, but it's getting a lot more use. People could work anywhere in the world. This isn't the first time. It's just
Yep.
that I think it'll be over the next couple years. I think there will be a small explosion in what's possible online. But the truth is, unless you're doing something that requires you to be face to face with another human being,
Yep.
like, for example, working at McDonald's, you can't do that from home. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Or, I don't know, building bridges, you can't do that from home. So, or in a way, actually, I started to say provide medical care, but some of that can be done virtually and is being done virtually now. So I think it'll be broader. I think, but I think it's just broadening what's there already. Anyone, if you're doing some kind of work that is can be done online, that's all you need is a laptop, phone, you're good.
Yep. Okay.
I I think I think in some ways we live on the internet now, but
Yep.
I think we'll live in it in some different ways, and we'll choose our real life. Um, I think more people will choose that based on what works for them and not just the way things have been.
Yeah, at least there was a quote from, I think, the portrayal of Mark Zuckerberg by Jesse Eisenberg in the movie Social Network. There's a quote that says, "We will live in the internet."
Yeah,
I think it's not that we will turn into like Tron, whereby we will live
right.
like as an avatar, but the thing is that I think it in a positive side, it actually does improve our world as globally. It's because it allows us to be more interconnected, and well, we do things in a much more efficient way compared to the past. Do you agree with that?
I totally agree. And I think in many ways, the web can connect people in ways that we can't otherwise. Like, for example, I talk to my mother on Skype most every day. She lives on the other side of the planet. And
Yep.
it helps her to be comfortable and at ease with the fact that I'm living on the other side of the planet. Um, and things have happened since then. For example, a while back, she said, I don't know where I left my glasses. I can't find my glasses." And I said, "Is that them over there?" And I found them from Singapore on the other side of the planet. It makes things possible, connections with people with similar interests from all over the world, people we don't even know. And the fact that we can now have visuals instead of just voice changes everything. So I think it can bring people together, absolutely. I think it's also it's it's a different kind of connectedness from being connected in person with another human being, which isn't going to happen so often for a while.
Yep. Okay. For those who just tuned in to the show for the very first time, Global Citizens is a platform or a show you can call it, whereby I invited people who has experienced multicultural lifestyles. So, like for example, myself, I'm a third culture kid. I'm an Indonesian, but I grew up in Singapore for most of my life, and now I'm back here. Digital nomads that we actually discussed earlier, and expatriates. So basically, those who are deployed for work overseas. Why I actually invited such individuals is because a lot of times when you visited a country, maybe you visit for a holiday, yeah, you are there as a visitor. Of course, you can tell me things like, "Oh, I experienced something different. I experienced a new culture, and etc." But the thing is that it doesn't compare to when you live there, because when you live there, you are exposed to internal issues. In fact, issues that might not be so common, such as racism, maybe. So when you learn to see all of this, all of the pain, all the real actual issues that we humans actually experience, it becomes a part of you and it molds you into a new kind of individuals. I think that is what Katie mentioned earlier on pain actually molding you. Okay, Katie. So I actually want to ask a bit of question, and this was on your opinion. Sorry.
Hmm.
So there has been multiple cases of racism or xenophobia that is happening around the world. Uh, yeah, some parts in the United States, UK, Australia, and pretty much most areas whereby maybe a Chinese born or maybe a Chinese citizens could be there. So you've lived in Singapore your for even longer than me, actually. So For in your point of view, what actually can allow somebody sorry, maybe in general, maybe to be more accepting of those of other cultures? So the reason why I said this is because racism could be traced back as early as maybe during the eras of war. I mean, like if let's say your great granddad or your granddad was serving in the army, and then they see the entire battalion is hacked by maybe either a Japanese soldier or maybe a Chinese national, and it becomes an unfounded hatred, and well, it's passed on to the next generation. So, what do you think is it? Because Singapore has been one of the most beautiful thing about Singapore. In fact, it's a melting pot of cultures. You've lived there for 21 years, and in fact, it's what you love the most about it.
Yeah. It's a great question. I have an answer to that. When I was growing up in the US, in the southern part of the US, I have to say my father was probably the most racist person I've ever personally known in my life. Racism in the South then and often now relates to white people being racist about anyone who is of color, brown or beige or whatever, not white. And when I was growing up, of course, I loved my father, and I thought when I was little he knew everything. It wasn't until my parents separated and we moved to a different school system where it was integrated. I went to Charlotte Mecklenburg school system in Charlotte, North Carolina, for my high school and junior high, and it was the first time I was ever in a classroom with anyone who was African American. And in fact, because of my upbringing with my father, I was recommended to be in an advanced English and advanced math class. But when I went for the first day of class to my advanced English class, and it said something like room 102, I got there and I walked inside and saw that there were some African Americans in the room. I thought I was in the wrong room. I thought I was in the wrong room. It couldn't be possible that an advanced English class they would be there. I went out and found a teacher in the hallway to ask them and confirm. The reason I'm saying this is that I was surprised. Yes, they said that is the room for the advanced English. And what happened was that year I was sitting in my row. To my right was a guy who was an African American guy who I became friends with during the year. And one of the things that helped me to shift my thinking about anyone who was different was that I found that he was smarter than I was. It was like I wasn't sure I should be in the room. And we became really good friends. It started to open my mind beyond what I had been told. So for me, what I find is that whenever we're able to be ourselves with people and simply be with them as we are, authentically being ourselves, telling what's true about us, I find it's giving other people the opportunity to get to know you as a human being. And once we actually get to know someone who is different from ourselves as a human being, it's when we can start to say, wait, this idea that I have or that my father or grandfather had, that all people like you are in some ways not so good, it's not true at all. So one of the ways that I find helps people to get beyond their stereotypes is to start to know an individual, because no one fits stereotype. It's not a full human being. So I'm really, in fact, when I'm doing my coaching, I'm very, very careful about listening for judgments that people make. And we make judgments all the time around people, even whether it's about someone's background or ethnicity or anything. We make judgments, even if it's just that he's not good. The thing is, it never is the true story about that person. And the only way we can find that out is to take the time to get to know them. So that's my recommendation, which means be yourself around people. Don't hold back. Don't think you're not good enough. Just be yourself so people can see who you really are.
Okay, just give me a second to that. Yeah, because that is something that's really deep, and I really appreciate that you say that. It's because, well, I think a lot of people tend to not want to tackle on this issue because people are stubborn in thinking in what I know in the past is always like this. So whenever I have to go somewhere else, I carry that mindset. So yeah, I truly appreciate on your statement on that. Okay,
I want to just add something, Calvin.
please, please.
I agree with you. Very often, every one of us has something that our parents have told us, or we have some experience that happened to us, where we have now decided certain people or a certain person is not okay, and for one reason or another. Um, but the thing is, if we are stuck and are not open to really seeing another person or thinking differently about people, what tends to happen in our life is that people will come to us in our life who are there to help us to understand that whatever idea we have about things is absolutely not true. So I'm going to say, making judgments about people for any reason, does not help any relationship, and it will only lead to some kind of dissonance between you and the other person, and between you and other people around you. So people sometimes do get stuck. It's not that they're bad, it's that they're at that place right now in their lives. But it doesn't mean they'll always be there. And
Indeed.
I'm just saying, I've met and I know many people who have not only been able to start to see people as human beings, not as one thing or another, but also to start to back off from making judgments about people, because judgments never, ever help a relationship. Never. It
Indeed.
confines people and doesn't allow them to grow or get bigger. Now I'll
Mm.
stop.
Ah, no worries, no worries. No, that's a really amazing sentence. Not worry. Okay, so okay, being a facilitator and a coach for multiple kinds of individuals, and you have to cater to different kind of personality and learning styles, and not to mention if they had come from different kind of backgrounds or ethnicities, everybody would have a different kind. Everybody is different. This is as what you have highlighted in the beginning of the show. Yeah. Uh, how do you feel it can make the transition easier for others to actually start to make it easier for an environment to actually aim towards a central direction? I think this is actually really important for entrepreneurs, especially because a lot of times companies, just as the source of, well, of judgment of other races happen, it's because in the past this is how it has worked, so we follow it the exact same way. But in this era now, we actually already started to notice some things, like for example, the fact that we can't even be outside. It's no longer an entitlement. In fact, now being outside is seems like a privilege, like seeing the sun. I kind of worry
Mhm.
some people will get sunburned, but in the future, but that's another story. Yeah. So, what do you think of this, Katie? And sorry, a second part of that. Do you believe that a mixed kind of ethnicity and environment is actually a lot more productive than a single style of working? Sorry.
Absolutely. So, for the first part, I want to say that when I moved here and started working for the company that I worked for about the first 8 years, I was very fortunate because this is a regional company, and they hired people from all different backgrounds and ethnicities. It's one of the reasons I stayed there 8 years, because I loved working with such a diverse group of people. It really was life giving. Um, so I think it also helped me to be able to meet all different kinds of people with all different kinds of background, and to start to get to know people who were, excuse me, different from me. I absolutely believe, and research backs this up, that when you have a diverse group of people working together, you tend to tend to get to better ideas, better solutions, um, better kinds of outcomes, because it's not just a one way of thinking and seeing the world. So I absolutely know from my own experience, and just research shows too, any way that you can mix up a group of people, whether it's backgrounds, cultures, religion, um, uh, and personalities, that's always going to be better, because you have such a broader way of seeing the world. If you have 6 people together and they all see things the same way, you're never going to get to the best result. That's just a given. So I also think that once you have worked in a kind of environment where there is a lot of mix of people, then it's hard to even think about going back to just one race. I don't know. I would never do that. It's too boring. It's not big enough. It's not alive enough. It's not rich enough. Then when you have people from all different backgrounds on the same boat, far better, far more interesting. And so I think the more you can, if you're looking for a job, look for a company that is not of one race, because a company with one race, or let's say 98% men or 98% women, one way or the other, it just means that wasn't happenstance. If there is only one race in a company, that happened by someone's design. Someone chose to do that, because you have lots of people to choose from, and you're not choosing other people who are different. I always, even in facilitating workshops, the more leaders can hire people who are different from themselves and different from your team, so you have a real mixed group of people working together, the better. And the more aliveness to the whole team. I really, really loved working with that company that had people. I had never worked with people from India or Burma or South Africa or Pakistan or the Philippines or Indonesia or Thailand, China, Japan. I'd never worked with people who were from such different countries. It was very, very electric in a way.
Okay. Okay. All right. So, sorry, give me a second. Okay. Do you mind telling us of, okay, people tend to call it a failure, but in my show, I don't like to use that term, because I want to use the term learning opportunity better. So, do you have a notable learning opportunity that is still so stuck in your mind now that it became a basis on how you coach somebody, or even when you interacted with new people?
There's something that happened that both impacted my coaching, but also how I facilitate a workshop. So I had maybe about 9 or 10 years ago, yeah, probably 10 years ago, I was doing a workshop in KL for a company there, and this company is a large company. They wanted to send 500 of their leaders through this workshop, about 20 people at a time. So I and one other facilitator were doing this. We started out doing it together a couple times, and then we both would do separately, but she would do some, I would do some. And we never, so anyway, one time they moved us from this academy that they didn't have enough rooms. A lot of things were happening. So they put my workshop in another building, and it didn't feel so right. It had some lower ceilings, and it just didn't
That doesn't feel comfortable.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. Now, having gone through that, I'm much more knowledgeable about what to do in those circumstances. But anyway, what happened was this. This was a 3-day workshop on leadership. And in the beginning of day 2 was a time when it was free time. So everyone could talk about whatever they wanted to talk about. That was for about 30 minutes. They were free to do that. And what we would do is observe them, because sometimes they would just waste the 30 minutes and talk about the weather. And sometimes they would get into discussions, because these were all leaders in the company, about things that mattered and really spoke and were open and sharing. But in this time, beginning of day 2 of a 3-day workshop, at some point, a woman stood up at the back of the class and she said, well, I just want to say, I haven't learned anything so far, and I don't think I will learn anything. This is about leadership, and I already know about leadership, so this is nothing new for me. And I just want to say, I don't need to be here, but I have to, so I'm here. That was the start of day 2, and I was a new facilitator, and I just remember standing in the front of the room, listening to her with, my face was, fine, but inside I was going, oh my God, I can't believe she's saying this in front of everybody at the beginning of day 2. This is terrible, and all of that. But as she spoke, I did what I focused on my breathing and centering myself, so I would be able to step into this in some way. And when she finished, I said, thank you for sharing that. If I could, I would tell you to leave and that you don't need to stay, but I know your company is requiring you to take this course. And I said, I just have one invitation, and that is my invitation is for you to be open to the possibility that you might find something to learn in this course before we're done. Just to be open to that possibility. And she said, well, okay, yeah, I can, like that. But what happened at the end of day 3 is she came up to me and she shook my hand and she held my hand and she said, Cathy, I don't know what came over me yesterday morning. She said, I have learned more in this class than in all the other leadership workshops I've ever taken put together. She said, I don't know why I said that. She said, I have grown and developed and learned so much. It's changed how I am as a leader and blah, blah, blah. And she said, I'm so sorry. I really don't even know why. Anyway, she went on. And for every time that I went back to that academy, if she happened to be there taking another course, she would, and if she saw me there, she would run over from the other side to say, Cathy, I learned so much in your class. So at the moment that happened, it felt like, oh my gosh, this is a terrible thing. But what I'm very clear about is that I learned so much in terms of how to step into a challenge like that, to not push back, but simply welcome it, be thankful for this, and get centered so I can respond in a way that makes sense. And it absolutely was a great learning experience. When I think about learning experiences I've had as a facilitator, that was one of the best ones. I love it. I'm so glad it happened.
All right. Okay, so I actually have one last question for you.
Okay.
So, what advice or a book would you give to an expiring speaker, coach, or facilitator, or somebody who is now going to be, well, it's quite impossible to do it now, but the thing is that in the future, whereby they will have a chance to be deployed for overseas work, what would you advise them actually?
Oh, okay. So, first of all, for an aspiring speaker or coach or facilitator, my advice is to, if that's what you want to do, which is great, step into it and really work on getting better and better and better. Make sure if you want to be a coach, take a qualified professional coach course so that you really learn, so you know what you're doing. I don't even have a website, not yet. It's going to happen this year. But all the work that I get comes from referrals and repeat business. And
Yep.
my work, ever since I took that year-long professional coach certification course, my work goes up every year, all from referrals and repeat business for both coaching, facilitation, and speaking. And so what I'm clear about is if you focus on getting better and better at what you love doing, you don't have to worry about work coming to you. It just comes. Even this year, even during this COVID time, I have more new coaching clients than I've ever gotten in this same period. In January, February, March, unbelievable, from companies I've never worked with before. So the first thing is to really get good at what you're doing, and focus every time you give a speech, every time you coach someone, every time you facilitate a development program. Ask yourself, what can I do to make it even better than the last time? If you want to be a speaker, get out there and start speaking and hone your message. And after each time you give it, ask for feedback. What did you like about what I just did? What could I do differently to make it better? Same thing about facilitation. For someone who wants to, you're saying wants to interview to get a job to go somewhere else? Is that what you're saying?
No.
To another
No,
country?
I actually just basically saying somebody who want to enter a line as a coach or as a speaker, because nowadays I do see the pattern is that, well,
Is that one?
oh dear.
Wait, you're frozen.
Yeah. Hello.
Yeah, you were
Kathy.
frozen. Yeah, you were frozen.
Okay.
I didn't hear that question.
Okay, apologies, guys. I think now it's in the afternoon, so a lot of more people will be using the internet. I think that's what result in the lag.
Yeah, no worries.
Sorry, Kathy.
What was the question? I didn't hear it because it was messed up.
Sorry. The last one is actually somebody who is about to be deployed for. Oh dear.
For working
Apologies.
overseas. For working overseas?
Is it better now?
Yeah, better now. Someone who's about to be deployed for working overseas, is that what you're asking?
Oh.
Is that the question?
Oh, sorry. Okay, so the second part is on if somebody who is going to be deployed for a job overseas.
What advice?
Oh.
If you're asking for what advice I have for them,
apologies on that. Apologies on that, guys. The reason being is that now it's in the afternoon here in Indonesia, so the terminal will be a lot more jammed because everybody start using now.
Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me, Calvin? I'm not sure if. All right, I'll answer. For people who are about to be deployed overseas, my suggestion is go for it. Don't hold back. Be yourself.
Correct.
And
yes.
Don't feel intimidated. So, one of the things, Calvin, you were going to ask is about what I might, I don't know if it's still going, but I'll go ahead. What I might advise someone who feels that they're not valued despite their own talents. My suggestion is for a book like something like Soul, S-O-U-L, Without Shame. Soul Without Shame by Byron Brown. It's to read a book on your inner critic. Everyone has an inner critic. So part of it is to work on yourself to develop an ability to silence the voice that is your own inner critic.
Yep.
And the second thing is to work on is to take a look at, there are things on the web that talk about people who in their lives were dismissed. Even one is Michael Jordan is one who was told at some point, you'll never be good enough to be a basketball player and you need to just quit and start doing something else. People have been told throughout history they're not good enough, but they actually were and are. So being able to hear someone or yes, to say, to dismiss you or feel like you're not good enough, and just hear it as that's their view. It doesn't mean it's true. Really working on accepting yourself as you are and stepping into simply who you are. You're unlike anyone else. You bring something no one else can bring. So really honing in on what that thing is and being yourself and discovering what it is that's unique about you. And working on your inner critic so you don't undercut yourself. That's my advice. This is for people who feel like they're not valued despite whatever their talents are. And go to somewhere else where they do value you. All that means, if someone doesn't value you, it just means they don't. It doesn't mean everyone doesn't. Yeah, that's what I would say.
All right. Okay, that is actually my last question for today.
Right.
So, yeah, apologies for the minor technical glitch, guys. It's in the afternoon now in Indonesia, so everybody will be bombarding the internet.
Right.
So, well, at least we got through most of it smoothly. But yeah, this, I guess, but at the same time, being the host is the scary part, since you try your best to always ensure your broadcast runs smoothly. All right. Okay. So first off, thank you to Cathy for coming here today. Actually, I know she's really busy even now during our COVID season. So thank you for gracing us with your presence today. Along with that, thank you so much for those who tune in to watch the show today. And I also need to thank these three individuals who leave positive comments and like. First off is Mr. Alberto Antinucci. Alberto is actually my former guest, and I think one of my earliest guests. I believe he's also a member of APSS.
What's the name?
Alberto Antinucci.
Yes. Yeah, he's definitely a member. Yeah.
Yeah, I've actually interviewed, I think around, excluding yourself, I think I've interviewed around 3 members of APSS.
Great. That's great.
Yeah, and also Mr. Vivek Iyani. Vivek is a millennial expert, by the way. So yeah, he has come to my show also once, and Mr. Ben Kartik. So just to let you guys know, if you guys do want to reach out to Cathy, her LinkedIn is already in the description box. You can see it immediately once the video is up. Well, it will be on Facebook in like around 5 to 10 seconds. So along with that, if you do reach out to her, please highlight where you know the show. Maybe you know her from my show, or maybe you know her from elsewhere, because it's for her personal privacy, and at the same time, so that she's not going to be surprised who are you, because it can be really scary. And along with that, I will actually be having a new episode of Global Citizens in this Wednesday, which is in Asia's time. My guest is actually from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She's actually a she's, however, an Asian. So, yeah, she's there to study, and we will be having her on my show this Wednesday for Indonesia's timing, and for her own local timing, it will be on Tuesday. So, yeah, that's the end of Global Citizens, episode 43. Again, thank you so much, Katie, for coming. I really, really love what you said today.
Thank you. See you. Take care. Be safe. Bye.
Bye-bye.